Hello everyone, welcome back to Anthropology PYQ series on SRIRAM's IAS platform. So friends, it's me, your Dr. Suresh Kuramkunda, your anthropology guide and mentor. So friends, a very good morning to all of you. And today, let's begin our discussion with a quote. So the quote for the day, our thought for the day with us is this. So try to just listen to this quote very carefully because it would be very much useful for you. So, every answer you write is a step closer to the shore of success in your UPSC journey. So remember this, my dear friends. Answer writing is a very important aspect that every aspirant must and should imbibe the skill. So here, each and every answer that you write counts and it will helpful for you for clearing the examination in the mains. So friends, start writing the answers along with our series at least, so that like you will get into the practice and you will get into the habit of writing answers. So that's all I wanted to communicate through the thought. So just listen to the quote again. So every answer you write is a step closer to the shore of success in your UPSC journey, right? So with this, let's begin and let's try to go to the question of the day. So before that, so those who have joined, you can just give an indication that they have joined. So very good morning to all of you. So first, let's look at the question of the day. So the question of the day with us is this: how the study of variation in forms of marriage led to rethinking on the concepts of social reproduction, kinship, as well as the family. So this is the question, right? So now, first, let's try to understand the basic demand of the question and let's try to decode the question first of all. Our very first thing is that the question has been picked from 2.3 paper 1. So unit 2.3 paper 1. So where the topic marriage. So if you see from the perspective of marriage, so the question's demand is that, so we have various forms of marriage. That's diversity in the forms of marriage exists. So how the diversity in the marriage forms, it helped us or it provoked to just simply rethink about the concepts of social reproduction and kinship as well as family. So that's the basic question, right? So I hope some of you might have answered the question. So now let's try to look into the approach part of the question. So how we can approach for the question, right? So first, let's see how you can approach to the answer. So first, in the very introduction, what you can do, in the very introduction, you can introduce the answer by highlighting the diversity in the forms of marriage and bringing in the relevance of the demand of the question. So through this, you can introduce. And by the way, you can also use a basic description of the marriage. So that's what you can do in the introduction portion. Then what you can do in the body portion of the answer, in the body portion of the answer, you have to address the chief demand of the question. So what's the chief demand? So where you have to explain how diversity in marriage forms, it reshaped the anthropological understanding of these three concepts. One is social reproduction, another one is kinship, another one is family. And what do? What you can do further? You can use some examples and you can explain it in a systematic fashion. So that's the demand and that's how you have to address the body portion of the answer, right? So then, if you happen to look at the conclusion, so how you can conclude the answer? So in the conclusion, what you can do, you can simply emphasize that marriage, kinship and family, etc. are flexible and culturally shaped institutions. And finally, you can conclude your answer by stating that, showing that how studying the marriage diversity transformed the anthropological theory of these concepts. So you can reiterate and you can explain that in a systematic fashion. So that's the basic approach. That's how you can answer the question, right? So now let's try to understand more about this particular concept. Let's try to now understand the concept. So first, in the introduction portion, let's start by discussing what is marriage. Okay, so before we proceed to that, so those who are in the live session, they can mention about one form of marriage that you know. So whatever the form of marriage that you can recollect at this point, so you can just text it. So text a form of marriage that you can recollect right now in the chat box. Then, first, let's try to understand what is marriage. So, if you see from the perspective of marriage, so marriage basically or generally how we can define. So, marriage is a universal social institution. So, what does it do? So, it gives a cultural sanction and social approval to the union between males and females. So, we are calling marriage as a universal social institution. So, one thing, why it is a social institution? It's a social institution because it is trying to regulate and control the sexual behavior of the human beings in the society. So, all the unit those controls and regulates the behavior of the people is nothing but a social unit. So, this is a social unit. And we are also calling marriage as a universal social institution. Why we are calling so? We are calling it as a universal social institution because marriage as a social institution exists in almost all the societies. So, everywhere we can see the institution of marriage. So, that's it. So, that's why in very simple fashion we can say marriage is a universal social institution. So, it gives a cultural sanction and social approval to the union between males and females. So, that's one thing that you have to remember from the introduction point of view. Then, if you see from the definition point of view, how we can pick. So, there are so many definitions that are being given in the realm of anthropology, but let's try to take up one authentic definition. So, what that authentic definition that we can have? So, the authentic definition that we can pick here is according to the notes and queries in anthropology. According to the notes and queries in anthropology, so we can see that which has been published by Royal Anthropological Society Institute of Great Britain and Ireland. So, marriage can be defined as it's a union between man and woman such that the children born to that women are recognized as the legitimate offsprings of the parents. So, this is how you can use this definition and you can proceed further. So, the definition given by the notes and queries in anthropology. Is that it clear? Then we can just move or jump to the basic demand of the question. So, where demand relevance of the demand you can pick. So, you can say that like this. So, it's an established fact that every human society from most simplest society to the most complex has the institution of marriage. So, as it is universal, so what else we can see? We can see, however, the cross-cultural variations exists regarding its form and the nature. So, cross-cultural variations will exist. So, these variations are nothing but the diversity in the marriage forms. So, that one thing you should recollect. Then, the richness in the cross-cultural diversity, what is it he did? So, richness in the cultural diversity in the marriage practices has significantly transformed the anthropological thinking of the social reproduction, kinship and family. So, this is how you can bring in the relevance of the demand of the question in the introduction, right? So, look at this statement very carefully again so that you can just get the essence of the question. The rich cross-cultural diversity in marriage, so has significantly transformed the anthropological thinking on the social reproduction, kinship as well as the family. So, let's try to understand how the cross-cultural diversity in marriage has influenced these aspects, right? Before that, let's try to see what are the various forms of marriage that we can have. So, various forms of the marriage, you can see that if you look from the perspective of different types of marriage that we can have. So, in current society, so we can have monogamy is one practice and polygamy is another practice. So, in monogamy, we can have serial monogamy and non-serial monogamy. So, what is monogamy? When a person will have one spouse at a time. So, that is known as monogamy. So, what is serial monogamy and what is non-serial monogamy? Serial monogamy means, let's say for example, a person married X and they were in a relationship for, let's say for example, 5 years. After that, they have took divorce. And then after 5 years, like again the person has married Z. So, they were there in a relationship for 10 years, let's assume. And then after that, again those couple have took the divorce. Again, the same person has married, let's say for example, A. So, if we observe this scenario. So the person is with only one spouse at a time, but he is just moving in a serial monogamy kind of mode of marriage pattern. So what is non-serial monogamy? Non-serial monogamy means entirely having only one spouse throughout the entire life. So that is one thing. Then we have polygamy. What do you mean by polygamy? A person having multiple spouses at a time. So let's say, for example, polygamy can be systematically divided into different types again. So we have polygyny, we have polyandry, we have polygynandry or group marriage, we can say. So what is polygyny? Polygyny basically refers to a person having multiple wives. If a person or if a man possesses multiple wives, so then that condition is known as, that form of marriage is known as polygyny. What is polyandry? So polyandry is nothing but it's a form of marriage where a woman will possess multiple husbands at a time. So that's polyandry. What is polygynandry? So it's nothing but it's a group marriage. So where group of people marry at a time. So that's one thing. So here in polygyny, so you can have different types again, forms again. So sororal polygyny, non-sororal polygyny. What is sororal polygyny? So let's say, for example, if a person marries the sisters of the same family, so then it becomes sororal polygyny. What is non-sororal polygyny? It's a form of polygyny where a man marries multiple women who are not necessarily the sisters of the same family. So multiple women, so like that. So that is known as non-sororal polygyny. So all these type of variations exists in the society right now. So then what is polyandry? We have understood that when a woman possesses multiple husbands. So then if you see from the perspective of the polyandry, it is again of two types: fraternal polyandry, non-fraternal polyandry. What do you mean by fraternal polyandry? So fraternity means brotherhood, fraternal means brother. So if a woman marries the brothers of a particular family or a same family, so then that becomes fraternal polyandry. Can you able to recollect the Draupadi and Pandavas? So that would be a classical mythological example that you can pick for fraternal polyandry. And recently there were also some news from the Uttarakhand stating that a woman has married two brothers. So that's an example for fraternal polyandry, so which became controversial also. So then what is non-fraternal polyandry? Non-fraternal polyandry basically refers to a woman or a women having multiple husbands who are not necessarily the brothers of the same family. I hope you can catch the essence. So like that we have different forms of the marriage, right? So can anyone text an example for let's say, for example, polygyny or polyandry? So whatever you can recollect in your mind, you can text any ethnographic example for polygyny, polyandry. So whatever the example that you can recollect right now. So let's see whether you could able to recollect anything or not, right? So that's one thing. So in this way, cross-cultural diversity exists in the marriage forms. So this cross-cultural diversity has led to rethinking of the anthropological concepts with respect to our social reproduction, family and kinship studies. Now let us try to explore about that particular concept, how it has been transformed, the rethinking about that. So first, let's try to start our discussion with the kinship aspect, how the cross-cultural diversity in marriage led to rethink about the kinship. So the cross-cultural diversity in our marriage forms, it has led to rethink about the kinship ties. So earlier it used to be believed that from blood ties to bundle of the rights. So this is how the transition was there, right? So then let's see, for example, how it is being perceived. So first, if you see from the perspective of the early anthropologists' assumption, so early anthropologists used to assume that the kinship as a biological descent, and kinship was based on merely the blood ties. So what do you mean by kinship? Kinship refers to the relationship between different members of the family. So that's basically kinship. So they used to believe that kinship is a form of blood ties. So relationship that exists due to blood ties, and it's a type of biological descent. But when we happen to see the diversity in the forms of marriage, so that led to rethink about this particular concept, where the diversity in the forms of marriage reconceptualized the perception from mere biological descent to a social and legal system. Now, earlier it used to be believed that kinship is a basic blood biological descent system. Now, we can able to see that kinship as a social as well as legal system. So that's one important change that we can remember here. And how it has been done and who contributed for such kind of perceptions. Now, look about the perceptions. So we have Edmund Leach. So can you able to recollect Edmund Leach? Edmund Leach belongs to which school of anthropological thought? Can you text in the chat box? So I'll take up the examples. I'll come to the examples, those who have given the responses. So try to recollect Edmund Leach belongs to which school of anthropological thought. So try to text it in the chat box. So Edmund Leach's idea of marriage as bundle of rights and practices, other practices like New Year's ghost marriage showed that fatherhood, motherhood, or the property and labor rights are socially allocated and not biologically determined. So what from this context we can understand is that, so one thing we can understand is that Edmund Leach has advocated that marriage as the bundle of rights. Why he advocated marriage as the bundle of rights? So once you get married, so you will get lot of rights. One, if you say for example from the wife's perspective, so a wife will get a husband. So a socially sanctioned and culturally approved, socially approved husband she will get. So it's a right. And for a man, that's for a husband, so he will get a wife. So that's one another thing. So each other will have some sort of rights on each other, and the children, those who will born to them, so for them also they will have some sort of rights. So that's why Edmund Leach have called marriage as a bundle of rights. Okay, so let's look into the responses. So very good. So we are getting answers like Amrish. Amrish is saying that. Very good. So very good, Amrish. So structural, functional. So Edmund Leach belongs to the functionalism or structuralism school of thought. So along with Cladda Levi-Strauss, he belongs to structuralism school of thought, right? So yes, Vanishri, good. So it's the structuralism. Okay, so apart from that, you have given examples for some of the marriage forms. So Amrish is saying that polygamy in African and Australian societies, astral societies. Prajna is saying that polygyny, example of Krishna. So mythological example she is giving. So any, yes, polyandry. So Nandi tribes and polyandry, Thodas of Nilgiri Hills, very good. So polygyny, Santals and Hos, very good. So yes, so if you see in the Nandi tribes, we can see a different type of marriage practice. That's women to women marriage practices we can see. So that's a different type of marriage practice, right? So Nandi tribes of Kenya. So good. So Amrish, Thodas. For Thodas are an example for polyandry. Very good. Very good, Amrish. So then further, like we are getting those responses. So very good. So now let's try to explore more about the concept where we were. And there were some other practices like, let's say, New Year's ghost marriage practice, Newer tribes of South Sudan. So Evans Pritchard has systematically studied the New Year tribes of South Sudan. So where he discovered a unique pattern of marriage system that is known as ghost marriage. So what used to happen in the ghost marriage? So in the ghost marriage, let's say for example, a man has been deceased. So the deceased person's wife will be married to another person from that particular family. And the children born to this living couple would be considered as the children of the deceased man. So that's why all the children will be considered as the successors and heirs of that particular deceased man. That means the person who has passed away. So that's why we will call such kind of marriage as the ghost marriage practice, which can be seen in the New Year's. So in that, what we can see there, it showed that be it could be fatherhood, be it could be motherhood. So all are not biologically determined, whereas they are socially allocated. So here, society is allocating that this particular children belong to so and so person. So whom does not exist in the reality. That means he is not living. So that's how we can say. So this is one way it has redefined the concept of our kinship, right? So then, if you see from Levi-Strauss perspective, again Levi-Strauss is a structuralist, Claude Levi-Strauss. So he again further highlighted marriage as a system of alliances and exchange between the different groups. Do you remember the restricted exchange pattern of alliance theory that has been advocated by Claude Levi-Strauss? And Levi-Strauss has systematically studied tribes which are very well known for the unique marriage, circular marriage pattern of alliances. Can you able to recollect the tribe on whom Levi-Strauss has systematically worked and established that marriage as a system of alliances? So try to text in the chat box those who can recollect the tribes on which Levi-Strauss has worked and highlighted marriage as a system of alliances. So try to recollect and say. So we have discussed it as a previous year question also. So try to recollect and answer in the chat box. Then, so this is how the various variations in the forms of marriage has systematically redefined the thinking of kinship. Then let's try to proceed further and let's try to understand how the variations in marriage has led to rethinking about the family. So it led to rethink about the family from universal nuclear unit to domestic group or household group. So let's try to understand this in a systematic fashion. So first, how it used to be perceived means, let's say for example, the traditional functionalist definition of the family was that as a universal nuclear unit which comprises of man, women and their offsprings. This was the perception that we can get from the Malinowski's definition. And it was fundamentally destabilized. It was fundamentally destabilized by variations in the marriage. So how it got fundamentally destabilized? Now look here. We have a lot of different types of families. Let's say for example, presence of joint families, STEM families, matrifocal households, or same-sex marriages, or polygynous or polyandrous unions. All of them, they have systematically demonstrated that family is an adaptive entity. So family can adapt to the existing scenarios and situations, and it's not a static one. And what does it say further? And it says that it further redefined the scope of the family beyond the traditional perception of a mere nuclear model. So the Western thinkers have highlighted and they have pitched this perspective that family is basically it's a nuclear unit. So variations in the study of marriage that led us to rethink this perspective, and it has redefined this perspective. So now what we can do, like we can see family is not only nuclear unit, rather it's like we have joint family system, STEM family system. So all these things are due to the existing variations in the marriage patterns. Now think about this cases like Thoda's polyandry. So polyandrous condition that further it further takes us to just establish joint family kind of system. That's one thing. And the same Khasas of Uttarakhand is another example for polyandry. So this is how you should recollect some of the examples, right? So there, the cases like Thoda's polyandry and matrifocal households, they have systematically demonstrated that the parenthood, the domestic organizations are socially constructed through the rituals and residence. So that's how the perception on the family has been changed from a traditional nuclear unit to a domestic unit or domestic group. So that is one further aspect that we can perceive from this study in cross-cultural variations in marriage, right? So Very good. Then let's discuss about the next concept. So before that, let's see, did we get any answers like that? Okay, so Litika Sahu is asking, sir, PSIR के लिए class नहीं होता है. So we'll just look into that aspect, Litika Sahu. Then Vinishri is saying that Sumi Naga of Nagaland. Okay, Litika Sahu, SRIRAM says. Okay, so let's get into a discussion. So the question that I was asked you is that, so Levi-Strauss worked on a tribe, so which systematically helped him to establish marriage as a system of alliances. So this work he has done in Purum tribes of the northeast India. Can you able to recollect the Purum tribes? So the same question was also been picked and asked in the 2025. So where we can see things like Purum kinship system, that was the question that has been asked. Can you able to recollect now? So Purum tribes was the tribes on which Levi-Strauss has been worked systematically to establish marriage as a system of alliances, and he used this to explain in his theory the alliance theory of the kinship. So that's what. Now let's see how the cross-cultural variations and diversity in marriage helped us to rethink this social reproduction. So social reproduction has been reconceptualized from biological reproduction to cultural reproduction. So let's see how the perception has been brought a change. There, you can see that. What is social reproduction? We should understand it first. Social reproduction basically refers to how a society perpetuates itself across the generations. Be it could be biologically, be it could be socially, or be it could be ideologically. Right? So social reproduction means it's nothing but how a society perpetuates itself across the generations. Now, what was the basic perception or earlier conception of social reproduction that we had? So let's see first. So social reproduction was once seen as the biological procreation of the children. And apart from this, social reproduction also perceived as the inheritance of the property from one generation to another generation. So this is how social reproduction has been perceived. But now, what has been done now? So the variations in the marriage forms showed that this process is deeply cultural and political. So we have understood that the process of social reproduction is not merely a biological one. So rather, it's deeply cultural and it's deeply political also. So how we can just see these, for instance, if we take up the case of the ghost marriage among the Nuers of South Sudan, so what we can perceive there? So that shows that the children are counted as the heirs of the deceased man, so that we have understood. So children are counted as the heirs of deceased man. So which establishes that social reproduction is a cultural and legal process, and it's not a just biological practice. So the conception that we had was the social reproduction is a biological procreation of the children. So that has been revitalized and reconceptualized, and as of now we can perceive that the social reproduction is a cultural as well as legal process. So from such kind of instances, right? So all the variations in the marriage has brought in this new forms of definitions of these practices, right? So that's all from the core concept or core demand of the question point of view. So if there is any doubts for anyone, you can text right now in the chat box so that I can take up those before we end the discussion. So friends, let's move on to conclude the answer. So how we can conclude the answer? So in the conclusion portion, so you can bring in these kind of responses where you can say that the study of cross-cultural marriage practices have revolutionized the anthropology, where simply you can summarize what you have done. So where you can show that it showed that kinship is not based on biology alone, but on the rights, it's based on the rights, it's based on the obligations, and it's based on the social recognition. So this is how you can say how the perception has been changed. Then, family is not universally nuclear, but it varies from joint, matrifocal polyandrous and ritual-based units. So that's how you can mention further aspects. Then social reproduction, it not only depends on the cultural rules, it depends on the cultural rules, that's the property flow, legitimacy, alliances, etc. And it's not concerned only with just the biological birth of the child. So that's how you can give in the concluding lines. And then finally what you can say that the study of the diverse marriage forms, it has systematically broken the earlier biological and the Western assumptions. What were those Western assumptions? So family is a universal institution, universal nuclear institution. Social reproduction means mere biological reproduction of the children, and the kinship is a mere biological ties or blood ties, like that. So it has broken that earlier perceptions, leading anthropology to redefine social reproduction, kinship and family as flexible, culturally constructed, as well as the universal and biological units. So this is how you can use any of these lines and you can conclude accordingly. So that's how you can approach to the question. So I hope, is this clear to all, or any further doubts in this particular aspect? If any further doubts, you can just type in the chat box. Right, so come up quickly, you can text as of now so that we can move further. So that's from the point of today's discussion. So friends, some of you have raised requests to share the question early by 11:30 so that you can start writing the question in the day whenever you find the time. So I thought rather than sharing it like it takes some time, so I thought to just include it as a slide. So now the question for us for the next session, you can have it and you can just note it down and you can just write answers for this particular question. So the question for the next session, that is day 15, would be this one. So question 7.B from Anthropology paper 1. So what is that? What are the major theories proposed in support of the origin of the food production, and how the change in subsistence economy brought revolution during this period? So it's a 15-marker question and you can note down the question, and whenever you find the time, so in the day you can write the answer and you can submit the answers through the Telegram channel. So now pass here and try to note down the question, and then you can just write it. You can write it and you can share it. So take a moment and note down the question, and then you can proceed further. Yes. Now, so after writing the answers, you can share the answer through our Telegram channel. So you can share the answer so that you can get evaluation and feedback by evening. So you can join the Telegram channel Anthropology Guide, so through this link or through this QR code. So that's all for today from my side. So friends, so I hope there are no further doubts. So let's meet again in the next session. Until then, so keep writing and keep learning, and I wish you all the very best for those who have started writing the answers, and I wish everyone will start writing also. So remember, every answer that you write takes you to the shore of success. It's not that something that you are writing which is redundant, rather you can feel that it would be a step ahead that you are just putting in your journey towards the shore of success in your UPSC preparation. So friends, let's wind off today's discussion. So we'll meet again on the Monday exactly by 11:30 a.m. sharp. So thank you all for joining me with the live session. So thank you, one and all.